Hey everybody, welcome along. Happy New Year. Today is the 1st of January 2025, and I've set myself a challenge for the year. So, last year, 2024, not a great year for a lot of people, so we'll kind of just put that behind us. But one of the things I found is, although I kept wanting to come and make stuff and get on with projects, I just didn't get on with it. I didn't come out and start things in the workshop, and I had that creativity, but I never used it. So the challenge I've set myself this year is to make something every single day. Doesn't have to be a full project. We're not building furniture in a day or anything like that. I don't have time. But I want to do something creative, something that's making every single day. And my plan here is to document it and release a video once a week that just shows you what I've done in the days leading up to it. Some days maybe bigger projects, some days maybe smaller projects, but I wanted to document that process of trying to make something creative every single day. So I'd love it if you join me in this. I'd love it if you subscribe, like, all of that stuff that you're meant to do. But this is about me being accountable to myself and to you guys out there about making something every day in 2025. So now that I've moved slightly in shot, you can possibly see some of why I don't come out here and make stuff all the time. The place is a mess. There's stuff, there's things piled on tools. It's just not that great a place to be. There's dust, there's cobwebs, and all of that. So some of the projects I'm going to do are going to be workshop based. They're going to be about improving this space, making it somewhere I want to be more often, somewhere that just feels a bit more productive, where I don't have to dig through things to find stuff. Today's project, I'm going to start off, I've got the lathe section behind me here. This wall here doesn't really work for me, and I've got a pile of accessories and things like that I want to get on the wall, sorted neatly, so that they're to hand. So today, I'm just going to make some little shelves and brackets for storing stuff in. So I'm going to start by focusing on these two support extensions. There's a lot of weight in them, which is a fairly major factor in this, in that if I do a really thin shelf and stick them into it, they run the risk of pulling the shelf off, especially given that back wall is just a bit of MDF. So what I think I'm going to need to do is quite a wide shelf with some down supports. If I was to do something narrow with supports, I'm going to use up a lot of the middle space. So a wide shelf with some down supports. Because of the shape of this piece here, I probably need to take the approach of having a shelf with an extension upwards for this piece to go into. So this is voiceover Neil in the edit at the end of the week, so obviously I can do all of this voiceover with the benefit of hindsight. I thought I'd maybe use some of the voiceover time to be able to talk through some of the stuff I learned during the week, some of the things I worked out, but also some of the plans behind all of this. Obviously, I explained at the beginning that this is about getting me back in the workshop and back making things, but one of the things I'm very aware of is I'm not always going to be able to be in the workshop. So over time, I'm going to be thinking about alternative things that I can do that are creative, that are making based, and that I can do, for example, when I have work trips away, or days when it's just too cold to be out in the workshop, or I'm not feeling great, or whatever. I need to be realistic and expect those days to come. So if you have any good ideas of things I could try, especially stuff that I can, pack in a bag and take to a hotel room with me and do there, then let me know in the comments down below. I'd love to hear from you. I'd love your input. I'd love to hear what you guys are making as well. So one of the things that I realised very quickly that I need to get over is the need for every project to be made in the perfect way. Yes, there will be times when I want to do projects that I want to take time over, put a lot of effort into, but the reality is what I discovered in this first week, and I guess what I already knew, was I probably only have at maximum an hour to an hour and a half a day in which to do this. It's also worth noting that filming this stuff makes it take a lot longer than it actually would take. Right, well, unfortunately, the alarm's gone off, which means I need to go back in and do real life stuff again. I guess this is probably something everybody goes through, but I only had an hour and a half. In my mind, I was going to make all the attachments to go on the wall here, and it would be all sorted and fine. Not the case. Shelf, I've got it this far. Screwed together. I've got the mounting point at the top. It needs some finish. It needs attaching to the wall, but essentially it will go on the wall a bit like that. So some decent progress today, but need to get this one finished off tomorrow, have a look at the other ones, and maybe need to adjust my expectations. Day one, done. Right, everybody, it is day two. It is 9:30 at night, and what I didn't want to have happen has happened, which is my day got so busy that I've not made anything. It's 9:30 at night. It is -2 degrees Celsius here in Scotland currently this evening, and I have not yet made anything. I've not got that shelf up yet either, so I'm going to start to get the shelf up, but the issue I have is with it being 9:30 at night, I can't run the power tools. We're in a residential area, child's trying to sleep up there, so I need to pick something to do that's not massively noisy. It also needs to be something pretty quick and pretty easy to do because it's cold, but I don't want to fail the challenge. I want to get something done today. I want to get something built. So whilst I mounted the shelf that I'd made the day before, obviously I'd done a few bits of finishing on it off camera there. Trying to think about what to do next as a project. Didn't have a lot of time, and as I mentioned, power tools were an issue at that time of night. However, it is possible for me to use my lathe without disturbing too many people. So I have a project ongoing for another video actually, which you will see at some point soon. Where I'm making a stool, and I needed to turn some oak down for some legs. So just a really small project, nothing particularly exciting, but something I could do late in the evening when I don't have much time, when it's cold and when I need to be reasonably quiet. So focused on just turning the leg down. As you'll see here, I hadn't tightened it into the lathe properly, so it moved slightly on me. Fortunately I did it early on, so I was able to reset it, re-crank it down, and keep going with the turning. It was really difficult actually on day two because I spent the whole day very aware I hadn't made anything yet, and I wasn't sure when I was going to get out to the workshop or what I was going to be able to do. I was slightly concerned that I'd failed the entire challenge on day two. I guess, again, a lot of this comes down to setting my own expectations about what's possible. So for me, this was a question of doing something simple and quick that I knew I could do that moved me forward in a project. Is it particularly exciting to turn a square thing round? No, not particularly. Probably not the most exciting thing to watch either. But it was something that produced the next bit I needed for a project I was on. So just focusing on turning it down to the right size and making sure that I had it set up for when I'm able to advance that project further. Hey everybody, right, it is Friday the 3rd of January, so day 3 in the challenge. I have literally like an hour today in which I can be out in the workshop doing stuff. I think maybe going into next week I need to think about some projects that are not workshop based, but at the same time I don't want to just film me type things on a computer because that's not particularly interesting. There might be some of that occasionally, but predominantly I want to be doing things that are a bit more visually interesting. So I've got about an hour. Don't really have anything particular I want to get on with. I could do more of the shelving and stuff for there. Again, trying to keep the video somewhat interesting, trying to keep the making somewhat interesting as well. So I want a bit of variety in this. I'm going to have a raid through the scrap wood pile, see what I can find, see if anything inspires me, and I guess make something. So having had a hunt around, I have found this piece of maple, very burnt by the table saw there, but we can stand that out. I think I'm just going to make a fairly simple spatula for in the kitchen. Seems to be roughly the right shape to start with. So I'm going to start by grabbing a pencil and sketching something out. I'd be really interested to hear what the rest of you who make things default to when you're running out of ideas. For me, it tends to be either scoops or spoons or things like spatulas. I tend to default to things that have some level of usage. They have a function. I guess partly because if I can define the piece based on the function, then I can get away with being a bit more experimental with the form, so long as it still carries out that function. This isn't a particularly complex piece to make. Ideally, I would have put this piece of wood through a thickness planer first, because I did end up doing an awful lot of sanding here. Unfortunately, I don't have a thickness planer at the minute, so that wasn't an option for me. I will say this Triton sander, I absolutely love. I'm not sponsored in any way, although Triton, if you're listening, hello. But it does make doing projects like this really easy. It's also the kind of project that I can do without an awful lot of thinking. It doesn't require a lot of measuring or a lot of planning. A lot of it is just keep looking at the piece and modifying as I go, which is quite a good thing. One of the things that I'd realised, especially after the challenge of day 2 and finding enough time, is that actually having some projects in the rotation where I could start and finish the project on the same day would be a really good idea. Now, in reality, you'll see in a minute that the actual finish of this project happened the following day, just whilst I waited for water to dry and before I put finish on it. But to get the bulk of a project and actually get to the point where technically I had a usable thing by the end of the day was a really nice thing. And I guess I need to definitely factor that in the future so as to make sure I've got some projects where I get the satisfaction and the sense of achievement from having finished them. I'd love to hear any ideas from you guys about quick little makes that you maybe do if you're just feeling like you need to make something, or any ideas of things you think I should try. I'd be very interested in that. Having done all the sanding on the Triton, I then used just some sandpaper to hand sand, break off all the corners so that I wasn't going to get any splits on it, make sure everything was rounded over nicely so that it was reasonably comfortable to carry. One of the things that's really important with wood that's going to get washed and things is to actually soak it with water at this stage after you've done the sanding and before treatment. It is a step that quite often gets forgotten, but what this does is it raises the grain, so any fibres that have been flattened down by the sanding but haven't necessarily been taken off will stand up as the water dries, and the piece will end up feeling quite fluffy. That was, however, as far as I got before I had to call it a night for day 3. Right, it is now, I am looking straight at the wrong thing. Right, it's now day 4, it is Saturday the 4th of January. Today's actually going to be the last day of make this week, other than editing of the video. So tomorrow the 5th, I'm going to do editing. Although this is a short week this week in terms of content, what my plan is to get to the point where I'm editing on a Sunday. I'll then actually in reality be doing some bits of editing and fixing stuff and whatever, thumbnails and the like. And my idea is to be releasing videos each Wednesday. So we're doing a short week this week so that we get the first video out on time on Wednesday the 8th of January? Yes, the 8th of January. So, I finished up yesterday, having made the spatula. I'd soaked it in the water so that the grain came out, and you can't see it, but basically the whole thing feels fluffy now. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start by just sanding that back, get some finish on it, and then I was contemplating misusing my soldering iron slightly and doing something pyrography-wise on here. Never done pyrography, definitely don't have the right tools. So making this one up, but it is currently -3. Don't know if you can see my breath. Anyway, -3 in the workshop. So we're going to do something today that's reasonably quick with something hot, which will be nice. Get that done and see where we get to. So having left it overnight to dry, which would usually only have taken about 20 minutes, but because of the temperature this time of year, it took quite a while to dry out. I gave it a sand over to remove all that fluffiness from it. This is just a 240 grit piece of sandpaper just to make it nice and smooth. And then I started to mark up for the patterning I was going to do. Now, in the piece to camera a minute ago, I told you I was going to use my soldering iron to do this. I then remembered that I'd lent my soldering iron out and hadn't had it back. However, I own an old Dremel tool, so I took the approach that I would carve into it. Had a raid through my box of Dremel bits and definitely ended up using the wrong bit to do this, but it worked, so in some ways, does that not make it the right bit? We'll have to wait and see. So whilst you watch me carving this out, this handle, and putting a pattern on it, I guess I wanted to sum up the week, as this is the last day of making before the day of editing. First thing to say, I guess, is it was harder than I anticipated it being, but I did manage to get it done. I think the assumption in my mind was that the reason I didn't make a lot in 2024 was just because I was being lazy. I think what this week has shown me is that actually, whilst that might have been some of it, quite a lot of it is my life is quite busy and I have a very limited amount of time to get out and do stuff. Now, I don't want to use that as an excuse. I don't want that to be a reason not to complete this challenge. I guess it just means that I can be a bit more realistic moving forward with this. So, I did manage to make something every day. Are there days when I feel like maybe it wasn't the most creative or the most interesting thing to watch, I guess? I'm thinking specifically about the day when I hung a shelf and then made a square thing round. It's fairly straightforward stuff and not particularly exciting. But at the same time, I got myself into the workshop, I did something with my hands, I moved forward some projects that I was working on, so I have to take that as a win. I also have to consider as I go forward what projects I can do that are realistic, and as I said earlier, I'd love to hear from you guys as to anything you can think of, any ideas that you've got. Please leave them in the comments below. I'd also love to see comments telling me what you think of this format of video. It's very different for me, and obviously I'm used to producing project only videos where I start a project, I finish a project, and then at the end of it I show you the nice pictures of the finished thing. And whilst at the end of this piece here I'm going to show you the finished product of this spatula, let's be honest, a spatula wouldn't make an entire project video that I would feel confident putting out on YouTube. So it'd be good to hear from you guys as to what you think of this format, anything you think I should modify. I'm not promising to do everything you ask, but it would be good to get some input and see what you guys think about it. Having carved all those ridges in, I realised that meant I needed to go back and sand them all, which was a bit of a pain to do, but with a bit of time and a folded over bit of sandpaper, I was able to go through and sand all of them. In a minute you'll see me apply just some food safe mineral oil to the spatula. It's what I use to treat things like chopping boards and things like that I make, and then I'll show you some pictures of the finished product. Well, as a first week, I think I did alright. I think I got there. I think it wasn't what I expected, it wasn't what I planned, but I've got some things I want to tweak and modify for week 2, and I think overall it got me in the workshop an awful lot more than I suspect I would have been in the workshop at this point in January. Any other year, definitely more than I was in the workshop last year. In fact, I'm pretty sure I spent more time in the workshop this week than I did in the entirety of January last year. So it's achieving its purpose from that point of view. Hopefully the videos are interesting and you guys are enjoying watching it. If you want to keep up with us and follow along, please click the subscribe button. If I can ask you to hit the like button if you like it, it massively helps because it shares the video wider and further if people like the video. But with that, and with these final images, I will say goodbye and I will see you next week.